right, welcome everybody. So Housing First in practice in Ghent, how we organize it and how it's originated. Actually, it started in 2007, I think, with a Flemish law who says that the social housing companies have to provide an amount of contracts for homeless people. They started with themselves, and they saw after a few years, 2 to 3 years, that 80% of the people who they gave contracts to got evicted. So there was a need for more intense support. And that's the moment where the city of Ghent took the responsibility of support over from the housing company. So we give a fast entrance and permanent housing through social housing, not the private market. And annually we have 59 contracts, and that's laid down in a cooperation protocol between the city of Ghent and the social housing company. Why do I say contracts? Because it's spread around the city of Ghent. It's not that we get 59 apartments. It depends on which apartments are available, or sometimes also when people, for example, used to deal in a certain area, or the dealer lives in a certain area, there is a possibility to ask not to live there or get an apartment over there. The 59 contracts are divided when they adjusted the Flemish law, that they largened the target groups. So 41 contracts are specifically for Housing First. 9 are for pact contracts, we call it. That's an organization that brings the psychiatric center in Ghent together. So it's for that target group. And then 9 contracts annually for youth welfare. Those 18 contracts, we don't provide the support. The support is provided by the people who ask for the contracts. In Ghent, it's like that the referral is done by the City Social Service or Center of General Welfare for the 41 contracts. That is, they make up social reports, and that goes to our services, where it's screened by the coaching service. And for the assignment, it's put that somebody has to be homeless for at least 3 months. You also have to apply to the conditions of a social housing company. You can have any other house that is yours. You have to be legally in the country. But that's not our rules, those are the rules from the social housing company. And then the public welfare for the city has to be authorized for you. So if the city is authorized for you to support you, then you will be able to ask for the Housing First trajectory to start. The next slide. So how is our team composed? We have a ICM team. So we have 9 support coaches. We call it woon coaches. Directly translated, it's a housing coach that we call it. We have our team leader, our administrative clerk, and the head of our departments. And that's our team within the Housing First project, but that Housing First project stands within the social department of the city. In that social department of the city, we have our colleagues we work with, and that's a little bit the little link between assertive community treatment team and the ICM team. In the next slide, yes. So these are all the services that are colleagues of mine within the social department of the city of Ghent. So we have the support coach, woon coach, and the general social worker. It's a direct colleague of mine. And as I said, we always work in tandem cooperation between the social worker and the support coach. So we can divide the roles for our clients. Money, administration go to the social worker. all other aspects of life, ask me and I will try to help you. A little extra we have with that, but that depends on which trajectory a client chooses, if he wants to follow that or not, is we have the possibility of an activation labor social worker, and we have our own psychological service. The benefits of those things is that we have an easy internal communication. We have our internal communication system with contacts. We see each other a lot. And it's a very accessible colleagues. So that's actually a little bit the assertive community treatments inside within our ICM team. And these are all services under the social department. And then, like I said, we can see on the next slide for all the other help, support that clients of us need. We have external collaborations within the city. The social medical centers, the district health centers, food distribution points, psychiatric centra, mobile crisis team, that's especially for people suffering mental illness. And also the Center of General Welfare of East Flanders is a partner in that. Can be for a lot of things. But when we need help like this, we go find it in the city, and we are pretty lucky in Ghent when I hear it from other cities in Flanders or in Belgium. When I make presentations from time to time, we really hear that we have a lot to offer in the city for our people, and it makes our work much more easier in a way. But I can say with those things that I think is very important is take time and invest in those collaborations and invest in communication, because a lot of is lost in communication a lot of the times. Explain why you do things, explain why you do things differently, and then ask for patience. Explain why you keep standing next to a client, and then not always follow something. For example, social housing company, they say the house is too dirty, it's dangerous. If my client doesn't think it's like that, then sometimes it's as little collusion between me and the social worker from the housing company, because he doesn't understand that I don't think it's dirty, but it doesn't matter that I think it's dirty or not. It's what the client thinks, and how we can meet each other in the middle. But sometimes it's important to explain that to co-workers, so we understand why we do things. And it's not to be pain in the ass, but it's because we believe in the way we work, and that it will be very productive in long term. Yes, that is in a nutshell, and within 10 minutes, how we organize Housing First in Ghent. And maybe it's good that we wrap it up here so we have more time for the questions, I think.
All right, thank you, Peter-Jan. Are there any questions from the group? You can actually just say them directly. You don't really have to put them in the chat now. If not directly, I have a first question for you, Peter-Jan. In what way could we say that we have fidelity towards the Housing First model with our support system? And are there any points that are not really Housing First, or where you would make changes if you could?
Yes, of course. For example, but it's a personal feeling of mine, and maybe I'm a little bit, it's more focused on that than other colleagues. But for example, because we work with social housing company, they want to make sure that when they give a contract to somebody, they want to be sure that there won't be any damage, that there won't be any trouble with neighbors. And from time to time, we really have to defend our clients, so it doesn't become conditionally. You ask for person X to have an apartment, but what is a drug abuse? What with this? What with that? And then, like every European project shows that you don't know when you assign somebody, you don't know it will be a success or it won't be a success. It's possible that somebody with a lot of drug abuse, a lot of criminal history is the best tenant they can imagine, and somebody who's going to school can have a very hard time in adjusting to his apartments. But for myself, I would like to change that there is more possibility for clients to choose where they live, for example, and that they are trusted in their process. Like now, we don't. When you go to regular social apartment in Ghent, you can choose which neighborhood you want to live in and which not. And for our homeless people, it's a little bit different because they have to be happy that they get an apartment. So, but then we start to communicate, and we tell them it's difficult for us. So we try to meet each other in the middle. So now the arrangement is that they have to choose all the neighborhoods, but if there is a neighborhood they don't want to live in, they have to give the reason why, they have to be open about it, and then they agree not to put somebody over there in that neighborhood. Also because we always tell to the housing companies that it affects the success and then it will affect the way if there are problems or not. If you put somebody in a neighborhood which he doesn't want to live in, it's the possibilities that the process becomes a lot harder is big. Is that a little bit answer to your question?
Yeah, I think here we really see the relation between theory and the context. I mean, we don't have the opportunity in Ghent to give people a lot of choice in terms of which house they can choose, let's say, to live in. We are already lucky to have some houses to use for housing firsts, but then again, the point of choice is not really made in a good way. There's a question from Carlos Oliveira. Carlos, you might want to ask your question live. No, I don't hear Carlos. Well, the question from Carlos is if you have specific houses for LGBTI plus population, and more broadly, how do we work with this population? I'm not sure if you have an answer to that.
Well, the answer to that would be like in the previous presentation, I said it would be discovering at that moment and what's important for the client. And then when you know that through the social report, that's an important issue for the client, before you go to the social housing company, you talk about it, you communicate it, what's important for you, what's less important for you, what are the do's and don'ts, and then we try to translate that to the social housing company. But I think it's very tailor-made. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then we also have a question from Geert de Bolle from Housing First Belgium Lab, who asks, why should housing providers work together with Housing First? Because if he hears this, as housing providers, the support team does not really care for the housing. It's related to your statement on the dirtiness of the house and the responsibility of the client to keep the house clean. So the question is, why should housing providers work together with Housing First if they don't really care about the dirtiness?
It's not that we don't care about the dirtiness. It's just not the goal is the process and not the apartment for us. We work with the clients and then try to go through a process from, all right, when it's dirty, then you'll get complaints. Then we have to continue with that. Why it's important, I think, or why it's good for social housing companies or other private organizations is because they have help with intensive support with people who get trust from the clients, and you have a direct communication. Sometimes it's hard for me to contact clients. It takes weeks, I can imagine, for the social service of the social housing companies. It's even more difficult. So they have a way in. They have somebody who they can call and they can let go. There is a problem. They send a letter. All right, the apartment is too dirty. We're gonna have cockroaches. If nothing changes within 3 months, we have to start an eviction, and then they can kind of let go, and we start to support. And I think it's much less expensive for them to work with us than after 3 months they have to get a lawyer and they have to start up an eviction, which costs a lot of money.
All right, thanks. Najib has a question. Najib, you might want to ask your question live.
Good morning, everybody.
I'm not sure your connection is good, Najib. I don't hear you. I think you have an unstable connection. I'll read your question loud out, Najib. So the question is if you think that people can misuse your support and how to avoid that.
Our support, the clients that misuse our supports. In which way?
Sorry?
In which way misuse our support?
Not sure, maybe in a manipulative way or something like that.
But I think that the only...
I think you hear me now. Okay, good
morning. Now we hear Najib. Yes. Okay, Najib, go ahead.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, everybody. So my question, don't you think that some people may misuse your great support, your great work, your great organization to have the possibility to get can say housing first, to enter to the social apartment, to the social housing, can say by one way or another. So to do sometimes a little bit more or less some theater or something who's not true. Then they can say, okay, we are now on the street for 3 months, for 6 months, I don't know how much. And then how can you control this situation, or what you do against this?
I don't, how do I say? I think it's very hard to misuse the system, because when you have the possibility to enter the system, that means you have a history that is shown in the social report from the social worker you work with, that you have a history of mental illness, homelessness, back in a house, back homeless, that you suffer from a lot of things. So I think it's very hard to misuse. To cover that a little bit, it's the screening of the social support. For example, somebody is a first-time homeless and has an income from social welfare from 1,400 euros. Then the service will ask questions back to the social worker who did the demand for the housing, and we will check, is there other things tried, or are you coming immediately to our service? We really try to control our target group, that it's somebody who suffers homelessness in combination with mental illness, in combination with addiction. So we really focus on that target group, because around the city there are other services who can help people with lower needs, and then we will advise the social worker to try out other needs, because we really focus on this target group. Mm-hmm. And in the end, when somebody goes through the mazes of the net, I don't know what to say, I still believe that I rather make the choice that somebody gets it who doesn't deserve it, I deserve in a way, then we would decline somebody or don't give somebody who has really a need and a right to it. So sometimes it's better that one goes through the maze, but the people who really need the help don't fall out either.
Okay.
All right, thanks. We have a question from Anna Thompson. Anna, you want to ask your question?
Hiya. I'm working on a Housing First project in the UK. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm wondering what mechanisms you have in place to capture learning from the program delivery and how you use that learning to then improve the service as it goes along.
Can you say that again? Sorry, I don't understand the question.
I'm asking what mechanisms you have to improve, to capture learning, lessons learned from program delivery as it's going along, and whether you use that kind of information to improve the service on a regular basis.
Personally, client to
I think on a team level.
Yeah, so across the whole service, across the program.
If you learn, in what way you learn as a team, and you implement the lessons learned to rework.
Oh, it's always a very slow process, but for me, and I think my boss will agree on that, is complaining is one of my my strengths in that. So when the good thing is by giving the courses, and then maybe something like that is important. By giving the courses every few weeks or months, it gets refreshed in my head. So I come with a new refreshments back to the team. So I pay attention to details that you sometimes start losing during the process, and keep on asking for change, and then asking for my boss to communicate with the services where I think adjustment is needed, asking for a judgment, there to speak in team, and then sit regularly together. But actually, I just complain a lot when I think something isn't going as it used to be, or like, for example, with the caseload, something like that. Our caseload was growing. And I went to a training with some berries, and I asked them, how do we handle that? How do we handle the caseload that keeps growing, because we have a big inflow and then less outflow? And his answer was, you just take more people who work for you, so the caseload goes down, because you cannot have another solution. When the caseload is too high, you walk too much away from the intensive treatment that is housing first. And then I come back to my team, and then when the caseload is growing, I complain. And I complain that, no, we cannot do this. We have to think, do we call ourselves housing first? Then we have to react, or we have to stop calling ourselves housing first. I think, that's my mechanism.
All right, thanks. I think we will slowly start to wrap this one up. We have one last question from Jim, who says that it was a great presentation, and he wants to know if you had yourself made any mistakes during the way and what you learned from them. Just a broad question to end with.
Constantly, I think I think it's important not to be afraid to make mistakes, because those are also the chance to learn a lot. For me personally, it's most of the time mistakes in the one-on-one with the clients. My style and my feel free, and then we'll see what happens. Style is very good for I noticed young people, people with drug addiction, but then when somebody with, for example, autism gets me as a supporting coach, then I make mistakes. What I learned about it is I communicate open, directly. For example, when somebody who suffers autism spectrum, I will always tell, all right, know that I'm chaotic, I'm this and I'm that. So it's just tell me, it's okay. If you're mad at me because I don't structure things enough, just call me and say, Peter, fuck that, man. You got to help me because you're not helping me now. And then it's good I have colleagues who are better in that. And then I ask advice to them, like, you know, how you do that? Because it's not in my my natural way of support, so I have to adjust, and I think that I learned always keep on your professional goggles and if a client needs a different support than you offer, then you have to adjust as a professional caretaker.
All right, great. One small last question from Gregor from Liège, who asks, how do you dialogue with the police? Because he has the experience that police often treat homeless people not that well. So,
like I said before, we are on some points lucky in Ghent, and here we have like a social department of the police, and then we call. I contact them. For example, a client of mine was raped, but she has zero trust in police. She doesn't dare to go. And then I can call that service to explain the situation, explain why they are afraid to go to the police. And then somebody from the social department of police will join them because I ask. But the most important thing is that I also always will communicate first with my clients. Like when the neighborhood policeman calls me a lot, I will first ask, is it okay for you if I share your information with the police or not? What do you want? What do you think about it? Or can we sit down together? Invest in communication. I think that's the most important, and try to explain police why we do certain things. Because a lot of the time the frustration just grows, and it's like those social workers, them pussies, and then from our side, the police, they're too hard on our people. But we have to communicate with each other and ask our bosses to have a reunion and then explain what we do, let them explain what they do, and then try to find a common ground, because actually we both want to help people, and look for that common ground between police and social workers, I think.
okay, thanks. That was very clear. We have a small change in program. Normally we would have Glasgow now, but we will first go with Toulouse Métropole. So we will have Hervé, who is the coordinator of the Accelerated Housing First Plan for Toulouse. And he is also part of the Solidarity and Social Cohesion Direction of Toulouse Métropole. And he will present the support system of Toulouse Métropole. Hervé, please. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Can you hear me? It's okay.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much to provide me the opportunity to present you the support model we experimented here in Toulouse. Just first notice that just to inform you that in Toulouse we have also another support model dedicated to homeless people suffering from severe mental disease, and we looks like Ghent model. So today we are talking about a more generalistic model. Yes, first slide, please. Thank you. So in June 2018, Toulouse had been selected by the French government as an accelerated housing first territory. So for us, that means we have the possibility to initiate innovative actions in the way of more housing first. One of our roadmap items was the deployment of a more efficient support through what we call collaborative platform. So the main principle of this platform is how to secure people in their housing pathway without considering their housing capacities. And just by respecting only 2 criteria, the residence permit and financial resources, even if low. Second principle is to gather competencies, human resources, and financial means in order to contribute to the platform development. And the last principle is to set up multi-field support for people requesting it, for instance, for mental health, parenthood, budget difficulties, employment. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what is the situation today? So we have started an experimentation in April 2019 with institutional stakeholders like local state services, with Toulouse Métropole, and with Toulouse Social Action Center, and also with Department Council, and with 6 civil associations which are providing general support to homeless people. And many of these associations are ULG members. Today, 210 people are housed in the private sectors and are supported by the platform. So it represents 70 families. A multidisciplinary team has also been settled, constituted by 4 staff who are able to support people in social field, in parenthood aspects, employment, and also in interpretership, which is an important subject for us. We have also put in place regular committees. One is dedicated to people.
Stworzyliśmy 2 komisje. Jedna z nich z myślą o...
Sorry. Okay, so I'm hearing.
I think we're hearing an interpreter.
It's okay.
Interpreter, yes.
Possible to mute her? Thanks, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So, so we have put in place regular committees. One is dedicated to people orientation, to housing. We have a monthly one, which is dedicated to household follow-up, and where we are deciding the necessity of a specific support to people who request it. And the last one is the coordination of the multidisciplinary team. Another point is from a financial aspect. Today's state subsidies are guaranteed to association for one part for the housing of people in private sectors, and the support indirect housing for I could say, normal use of the housing. And so we have also state subsidies for the involvement in the multidisciplinary team. So the 4 staff involved in the support team. In terms of finance, we have also a housing solidarity fund, which is managed by Toulouse Métropole, which is used in very specific situations. So if we talk about our success and our weaknesses after near 2 years experiments. So positive aspect first. So we have noticed a deep involvement and motivation of the actors in these experiments, particularly the association. And because they find in this model, they find added values. For instance, a certain security to house people with difficulties. You know, they can have the support, intensive support, and to help them and to keep people, to maintain people in the house, and to manage difficulties. But they have also an interest in sharing professional practices. You know, during these different committees, workers and people involved in the support are sharing their know-how and their professional experiments. So it's a very positive aspect. Second positive point is that we have in our platform we have a large diversified target groups, not in number but in category. So we have single people. We are housing single parents, family with single parents, and also families. And we have noticed that families are representing the main part of the people we are housing. So it's about 85%. Another positive point is that we have a low rate of failure, representing 5%, around 5%. So we have a flat which have been destroyed, people who left the housing with no news or something like that. But we have noticed that it's corresponding to mainly to single persons. So we have difficulties with single persons globally. In terms of weakness, so we have observed that main housing are subleased housing. People have not direct lease with the lenders because they can't provide sufficient guarantees. So civil associations are there to provide these guarantees. We are also very surprised by the low level of intervention of the multidisciplinary team. It's a real surprise. Perhaps a reason of explanation is that the process of selection of people are perhaps too high level. So we need to analyze this problem, this difficulty. Other weakness is that we are suffering from a discontinuity of funding. We are in an experimental model, so fundings are coming from 1 year, and sometimes we have last year we haven't got the continuity of the funding. So this period of discontinuity procure some doubt in the future of the platform. Another point is that we haven't deployed the mental support yet. So it will be one of our objective for the coming years. And we are late in the performance evaluation of the platform. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our next objective for the coming years so will be to develop partnership in the fields of psychiatry, for instance, in education, in youth prevention, to diversify the support the platform can provide to people. Another objective is to enlarge the support to the homeless households for direct access to what we call public social housing. Today, public social leaders are not convinced by some situation, so we intend to propose the support of the platform to help people to access to this social housing. So last other point I discussed about it is the evaluation, and also we talk about a client satisfaction survey we can propose, and we'll use the small scale actions to initiate this objective. And another point is we'll have to prepare the integration of the platform in a permanent structure for a larger deployment. So we have discussion today with and some actors. And the last point, and perhaps Dominique could detail this point, is the use of Housing Solidarity Fund managed by Toulouse Métropole, which help us to stabilize the funding. Perhaps Dominique, you can provide some details about this item. Dominique, you are here? Okay. So
yes, okay. Yes.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes. Yes, in fact, Toulouse Métropole has already a Housing Solidarity Fund, and we already have a support system to help people staying in their house and not being evicted for some other reason. Because of the irregular funding for the Housing First plan, we are trying to build up a public market to consolidate our platform, and all that is provided right now by the different associations and had for the first year funding from the state, we are going to do through the public market to consolidate it for the forthcoming years, so that we can stabilize that platform for the years to come, to allow us to go further and to be able, of course, to continue to help and support the people housed in the private sector, but also, as Hervé said, to open it to the public social housing. Now they are not always very keen because we don't have enough support for this kind of this target group. So we are going to propose to the social housing companies to give support for those that can go directly from the street to the social housing. That's it.
Thank you, Dominique. So, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Hervé and Dominique, for this interesting presentation. I think it's nice to see how you are really sculpting a system in Toulouse from scratch to something that might be sustainable once. You have temporary housing, you have temporary subsidies, but still you manage to put this system in place. So I think that's really nice to see. If people have questions, you can still put them in the chat. We already have a question from Angela. Angela, maybe you want to ask the question yourself?
Yes, so it was a little bit surprising for me to hear that they have 85% of people in housing first families, because we mostly work with single persons here in Timișoara, but we have families living in improper conditions, in improvised houses, and I was wondering if they house people who live in improvised houses or tents or mobile houses in Housing First, or how is it in Toulouse?
You answer it, Hervé, or do I?
Oh, okay.
Wes,
about
do they come, the families housed in Housing First, do they come from the street? Do they come from, yes, I don't know, living in tents or in mobile houses?
So, yes, the families are, you know, are coming from mainly from hotel. You know, the state proposed several possibilities to shelter people. The main one is the hotel. So it's the first you know, origin of family who access to house. The second origin are people who are living with friends or parental or family, other family. So they are living in a small flats or small houses. So they need to have their own house. And we have some people coming from Europe who are coming from towns and so on. So we have Bulgarian people, we have Romanian people, and so they access to houses through our platform.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Hervé. I have a quick question on that too, because when I heard it, I also was a bit shocked by the percentage of families, because normally I think in most cities, the biggest percentage are people who are living alone. So are these families representative for the whole population in Toulouse, or are they specifically selected? And are there also a lot of people who are living alone as a homeless, who are not included in this Housing First system?
So as I said, the platform we are experimenting today is a way to try to improve or to the access of people to house instead of access to sheltering. So it is our challenge today. The platform today is not dedicated to a category of people, but what we are observing today is that single people don't want to access to a flat through our platform, and most of the time they are not living in the flat. You know, they share the life between outside and in the flat, and they have not a project to live, to have stability in this flat. So it is an observation, but other people, single people, are housing through what I say about another device. You know, I talk about with intensive support for people. We have disease, mental disease, and so on. But for other single people, they are preferring to stay in a sheltering or outside.
Dominique?
Yes, but I want to complete, because we have the plan that Hervé is coordinating, but at the same time we have what he said, Un chez soi d'abord, which had started in 2012, which is really designed for people having drug addiction and alcohol addictions and psychiatric problems. So which is about 100 people every year, and mostly are single person and sometimes couples. At the same time, through the Housing Solidarity Fund, we also have support measure to help people with lonely people looking for 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom housing in the private sector. So we also do that at the same time. So it's just a constellation of different devices. All the objective is to have people housed, have their own house, and not be living with somebody, couch surfing and all that. And slowly also, the target is people into squats to come out of these squats and have their own housing.
All right, thanks for clearing that out, Dominique. We also have a question from Matthijs van Meuyen. Matthijs, it might be interesting if you ask your question in English, because we have interpretation to all the languages, if you want. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm a postal advisor in Den Haag, the Netherlands. And we have a great, we have a lack of houses for people that sort out of the institutes, for example, out of prison, out of youth care, out of homeless institutes. So we made an agreement with 5 housing companies and social care institutes, an agreement with 25 persons, but we have only 315 houses each year. So we are also looking at the private market. So my question is there an agreement with these parties in Toulouse, and do you have a clear number of people you are looking for with all these sort of demands?
In fact, in Toulouse, Toulouse Métropole generally, like most of the metropoles of France, in Toulouse Métropole, we have 13 social housing companies. And we just signed, we have what we call that the intercommunal conference for housing that has been put together since 2018. And we just signed on Monday a convention with all the companies and all the cities, the 37 cities of Toulouse Métropole, what we call the intercommunal attribution allocation for social housing. And 37% of the annual allocations go to people that are considered as priority, and homeless people are part of that group. So we have an annual target of about 2,500 people coming from that, the global priority target, and the homeless are part of that. And during through ROOF, we are going to have a specific analysis through the ESSA for that those that are on the waiting list for social housing and that declare that they are homeless. So we are going to analyze this more in details to make sure that it is the real target that we are aiming at.
But so are there also a number reserved for priority groups? Because when you are in prison or you are in a youth institute, you are not yet homeless, and you like to prevent that as a city. So you have also that number of. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. Interesting. Gregor has a comment also. Gregor?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think it's really important to look on the internal and external communication about the support system. We decided to create in Liège 3 months ago a task force. Every week, the social workers meet together and exchange information about users in the street. And it's really important because they have exchanged to find together collectively solution on the system. And at the same time, as we don't have social housing in Liège, what we are doing, we prepare in a common project, Solidar Owner, communication campaign with a lot of little movies about what we are doing on social support, and with videos from users explain how now they are living in better living conditions. I think it's important that we continue to communicate outside, but all the time it's important also to internally to understand the housing first model, and then we continue to organize training sessions for people don't already running on this model, and even kind of supervision sessions where the people can continue to talk about their difficulties. So the social workers are recognized and feel good, and they feel the support of the authorities on the local level.
Thanks, Gregor. Dominique, you want to say something about that from Toulouse? You have a same internal communication lines?
Yes, in fact, in Toulouse, we have integrated service for support and orientation for all people that are homeless. So they are part of the ULG group, and part of course, of the Housing First Accelerated Plan. So all the social workers know everywhere on the territory of Toulouse Métropole that they can do the social evaluation of the situation, and then hand out the candidates to the SIAO, this integrated service. And this service has the knowledge of all the possibilities, either for shelter or for housing first or for un chez soi d'abord. So they try to pick and choose the best solution for the person, and we will work really all together. At the same time, in the intercommunal housing conference, we have started since last year to have dedicated sessions of formation school for all social workers, doing welcoming from all people needing housing. So we regularly meet and organize day school to present what we do, how we do, and all the rules concerning access to housing. So we do that regularly now. That's part of the work of the Intercommunal Conference about housing.
All right, thanks. We're gonna have to wrap it up because we are already over our time, but I just have one small question to Toulouse, because I heard in the presentation that you have like 4 FTE in that multidisciplinary team, and I saw that there were 210 people housed. So is that I mean, that's a huge caseload, no? Or did I understood that wrong?
Hervé, je te laisse.
No, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
It's a good figure, but
it's quite heavy.
You know, it's yes, but you know, it has been sized without any experience. You know, we start with this team.
Okay.
We start with this team, and we don't know. We size it with the possibility to support in an intensive way people we need it, and in fact it was not the case. So for the next years we will reduce this team.
All right.
Because it's not enough. What we could say is that
increase the team. You mean?
No, decrease for the intensive support. Yes, because what I didn't say in the presentation is that when the people access to housing through specific measurement of the state, a part of their time is for support, but support for a basic support. You know, how to use the house correctly, how to pay the rent regularly, and so on. So this basic support is in the measure which is developed by the state. The 4 FTE is for the intensive support.
Really concerning employment, parenthood, and psychiatric help support.
Okay, that's clear. Thanks a lot, Dominique and Hervé, for the information and the discussion. We will now head on to our last city, our friends from Glasgow. I think they are already there. We will have Eleanor Lee and Helen Murdoch from Glasgow. So Eleanor is lead officer. Sorry, I have somebody coming through. Eleanor is lead officer for Housing First within the social work services. And Helen is the lead for the development and implementation of the Salvation Army Housing First services in Scotland. Of course, they do more than that, but as time is running short, we'll just start their presentation. Thanks, Helen and Eleanor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I must apologise, first of all, for mixing up my European and Glasgow time. And thank you to Toulouse for stepping up in our absence. It is in Glasgow, and I'm sure everywhere, is the year end, and a lot of financial work going on that pulls you in lots of different directions. And we would have liked to have been on earlier. However, my apologies, please. Thank you so much for involving us today in the roof work. It's been really interesting. I've only managed to get on a couple of times for a couple of the sessions, and Helen was actually saying there that the difficulty with the digital world is that if we were at the event, we would be there for all the sessions almost uninterrupted. So we look forward to the day when that can happen. Moving on to the Glasgow model. In Glasgow, we have been developing the current model. Thank you for the slide. It looks quite complex. However, we have been developing this model over the past 2 years of as the model's developed in Glasgow, with two kind of key elements. One being the pathfinder that's been set up by the Scottish Government with support from the charity sector of Social Bite, and have fully funded a pathfinder for 2 years. And we also have in the background the Legacy project, which is run by Turning Point Scotland, which has been running now for about 12 years with 30 people. And what we have tried to do with this pathway in terms of the person being at the centre of the pathway is create a single pathway that no matter what your route into Housing First is, that it is the same journey and the same support is available. Working within the Health and Social Care Partnership background enables us to really bring together people's original and set care pathways. So many of our service users will already have a social worker or a care manager, potentially in criminal justice or addictions or mental health, and there will be a care plan in the background there for them, and you'll see a bit about that when I come to some of the stats. Housing First is part of the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan for Glasgow, and it sits quite central to the work that's being done about rapidly moving people, particularly those with multiple complex needs, into tenancies quickly, into a stable home of their own. And the target for the strategy is 600 tenancies by year 5, and we're currently in year 2. And if you want to move to the next slide, the journey kind of starts very much in terms of the referral pathway in, and this gives you an idea. At the time that I put this presentation together, we did have 177 tenancies, which already now we've reached 184, and we are having offers in every day. The referral pathway is really about making sure that we have a robust assessment process, and in terms of the support for people and the support model, the intensive case management really kind of starts quite early on, because we will, as soon as we start the assessment, we will refer someone for support, and that connection and relationship can start there. It enables us to get people into a tenancy and not lose them. You'll have seen from that last slide that, you know, the age groups that we've got, the biggest component are aged 26, 60, 59. And what we know about the cohort of people that are the likely candidates for Housing First is that they have a long established trauma history, and most likely involved in a number of services over time, and least likely to be successfully engaged by services that are trying to work with them. So there is a lot of trauma and there is a lot of chaos involved there. We basically use the assessment process to try and identify what that person wants and where they want to go. And the core of our approach in Glasgow is about choice-based housing. The reason for that the reasons for that are multiple. But one of the key reasons is that we know that they will have a number of failed tenancies already, whether from the private rented sector or whether sofa surfing in friends' houses or some other arrangement, maybe temporary accommodation. And we tend to find that they have used their homeless services, temporary accommodation, multiple times over that long period of time. We also find that, we also find that many of our candidates are fleeing violence, sometimes drug related, sometimes related back to family trauma. And therefore, it's really important for us to get the housing element right, so that when we wrap around the bespoke support, that we have both of those elements really well considered. And the assessment is about the focus on the future. If we can, Helen, move across to Helen. They are then referred, once they're through the assessment process, for the intensive support that comes from the Commission service or from the consortium, if the pathway is part of the Pathfinder project. Helen, thank you.
So yeah, just to pick up from Eleanor, key to support and delivery is choice and control with the person at the centre of that support, and that starts at that assessment process. And the assessment that we receive from HSCP helps us form the basis of our initial support plan, and it actually helps us form that initial connection with an individual, so that we have an idea of what supports need to be in place while we're developing those relationships. That ensures that nothing that's really vital to get addressed immediately gets addressed within that time frame while we're developing that relationship. In terms of the tenancy, in terms of choice and control, we undertook a piece of research with some of the people who are using the Housing First services on their experiences of Housing First. And some of the real positives from that were that people felt that they did really feel that they had a choice in terms of where they went. That's a huge difference for the individuals who use the service, who felt previously their experiences where they were directed or instructed towards accommodations. So they got to choose a home that was theirs, and as part of the model that we offer as well, there's a furniture package that goes along with that. And lots of people found that that was a real benefit, because when they move in, lots of the stresses that they have to consider, individuals cited stories of moving into accommodations in the past and not bothering to buy furniture or decorate, so actually never really turning that house into a home. So people feel like they are moving into a home, they feel like it's theirs. One man described his home as his kingdom, so getting the key to his front door. The model itself is based on the 7 principles of Housing First, and we very much use the harm reduction approach, the assertive outreach, and in terms of engagement, people, in terms of their support and their support package, we work with people where they're at and what they're wanting to address, not with what we think should be addressed first or the professionals might assess. Even although that sits in the assessment process, we might have that conversation, but if an individual has substance use concerns and decides that that's not something they want to look at, then we'll work with them on the areas of their life that they want to address at that moment in time. And looking at care and support and delivery models, that's a really good way of getting a person to develop goals, a sense of achievement, and it's a good way for a person to move on to maybe some of those more extreme challenges that they find a bit difficult to deal with in their life. One of the other key things that we've found is in terms of recruitment and workforce, and actually what a Housing First worker needs to be, what they need to look like. And the key to that, and Eleanor's mentioned this, is that really that kind of trauma-informed workforce. We really need to be aware of how trauma has impacted on that individual, what that looks in terms of someone's day-to-day life and their actions and their behaviours. And we need to really support them and advocate on their behalf in terms of how that's translated to the outside world. Person-centred approach, as we say, is absolutely vital. That real flexible model of support. So in terms of what you can have your support when you want it, when it suits you, not that traditional, we'll meet you 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, you tell us when suits you tell us where suits you. And that really works well for individuals. Some people like to meet their worker and have a coffee outside. Some people like to go for a walk. Some people like to show off their new home. And it's a real sense of pride for individuals as well. One of the key successes to the Housing First approach is the multi-agency offer. So in Glasgow, we have steering groups and development groups. We are constantly looking at the processes, but even down to the multi-agency group that looks at all the cases. So at every level of strategy and operations for Housing First in Glasgow, there is a multi-agency approach, and that helps us learn bottom up, top down, left and right. So in terms of the individuals, the multi-agency team approach means that cases can be discussed, the support that they require can be accessed, and we can use the different disciplines within that team to support that access and help fast track people in some occasions, because when someone identifies they need support, it's usually a support that they need that day, and that team help us access as quickly as possible before the person maybe changes their mind or decides it's not that important anymore. And I think the key theme of all of this is just monitoring and outcomes and learning from where we've been. So part of that is we constantly review the process, we'll review the pathways, we'll review the models. We have undertaken some research which has highlighted the benefits of the choice, it's highlighted the benefits of a furniture package. It's highlighted that maybe we've still got some way to go in terms of accessing other services. So some clients reported it could be faster for them. It's also highlighted that Housing First is not a panacea, and that some clients feel that it's not their forever home, and that we shouldn't limit their hopes and dreams and aspirations by terming it that way as well. So there's a lot of learning for us as professionals around some of the language that we use in Housing First, and just really understanding the complexity of the lives of the people that we're working with and the experience that they've had and how that may impact on their day-to-day living. And for us, it's all about relationships, it's all about person-centred care, and all about creating environments where people can grow and thrive.
Thank you.
All right, thanks Helen and Eleanor for the great presentation. I think you have a very firm system in place there, it seems to me. If anybody from the group has a question, you can jump in right away. Otherwise, I have some questions ready. Somebody wants to jump in now? Maybe picking in on the last thing you said about the multi-agency approach. It interested me, but it was not clear to me on how to organize this concretely. Is it just about organizing it, or is it something you need some extra FTE for to make it happen?
Yeah, it does need a bit of work to make it happen. I think what's useful is when people can get over the barriers of their own organisation, because sometimes in working in the multi-agency model, each partner comes to the table with their own view or their own processes, and that's been a hard piece of work to establish something that's shared and to change that model. So, for example, we've tried to develop a model in Glasgow that's fit for us, while sticking very closely as we can to the fidelity of Housing First. But there's, for example, some things we're looking at just now as a development. We're looking at Housing First for young people, and because the model is working so well, we want to adapt it. And we're also looking at the potential test for change model for mental health. And what that means is that, again, each partner who comes to the table, you bring what you need for your own organisation, but you have to have an open mind about when it's a collective, how that can work. And it doesn't just happen overnight. Some of that's been based on relationships. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's taken actually reflecting and looking at the success of when something has worked really well and showing that that's the model that you want to adopt, that that's part of the process that you want to adopt. Because I think there are some really useful successes that we've had, surprising successes that we've had with some real complex cases. And I think the tenancy sustainment that we've got, so Our tenancy sustainment is based on people still being in tenancy. And for the cohort that we've got, we would probably look at a number of those would have been evicted from past, experience. And we have no evictions at all of going right back from 2 years ago when the first people came through this model. So we sit at about 84% of people still in their tenancies. And of the people who are not, it has mainly been people where there's been reasons out of our control. So for example, people have had a custodial sentence after they've got a tenancy, which is a shame. And there's some work needs to be done around that as the partnership with the criminal justice side. And we've had a few people who have died. And we've also had a few people who have needed an alternative care plan. Helen touched on, if I could just touch on this really quickly. When Housing First came to Glasgow in terms of this bigger piece of work, the Pathfinder in developing this particular model, there was across the partners, there was a real feeling that the complex case issue would be resolved by Housing First, and that everyone at Housing First you would wrap round support round each of these individuals and get them into a house, and life would be much, much better. But what we actually found was that some people, it just did not work and it just was not appropriate. And that led a lot of conflict within the partnership, the broad multi-agency group, around the idea of risk and the understanding of risk to the person and risk to others. So that is a real conflict situation that we had to really iron out and try and resolve. We have a number of people who have been in tenancy and we've had to get them out the tenancy and back into temporary accommodation because it just hasn't worked for them. And the sad thing, I think, for us about that is that if you push someone too hard, if you try and cross that boundary too much with people with complex needs, then the failure really is felt mostly by them. The failure would be seen as a figure in our statistics, but for them it's another failure to add to the journey of failures that they've had and traumas they've had in their life. So that multi-agency challenge is really about trying to focus back on what's best for the person. If that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks. How long did you need to get this system in place?
It's still going.
Yeah, of course, but when did it really start?
So it started at the very beginning, so 2 years ago. It was really easy to begin because of the enthusiasm around Housing First. So all the agencies were really, really interested and came to the table straight away. And then there was that kind of period of everybody's, we're going to do this, it's going to be really good and everything. And then as we started to develop it, I think that's where you then start to find out, from my organisation's point of view, I don't like that bit. From mine's, I'm okay with it, and then trying to balance that out. So it's been a journey with some real positives, but it's also been really difficult, and that continues because we are still developing the model. So there's a really good collective, but for some things like the risk thing, like the people who don't end up going through Housing First, we're still trying to find solutions to improve those. And there's not always a collective agreement about everything.
And I think also there's not always a designated resource in every part of the system for Housing First. So like you were talking about FTE, so in the beginning stages, everybody's excited and it's a pilot and you all want to be involved. But then, a few months down the line, the day job's still there. So people are trying to fit it in along with their day-to-day job. So that is something to consider in terms of how does that impact on existing parts of the system when you've not increased the resource to support it as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the difficulties when you're going faster. I think in Ghent we were lucky in a way that it grew organically which makes it much more easier to steadily grow your base on that. But of course, I mean, we still also have a lot of work on that. There is a question from Matthijs who asks how many houses are available in Glasgow in 2021 for this concept.
Okay. We don't have a pot of houses that are a definitive number. So in Glasgow, the local authority does not have any property, does not have any houses. So back in 2004, Glasgow voted to transfer their properties to housing associations that would be established in the city. And what we have at the moment is 68 different housing associations across Glasgow. So the way that it works is that we use the normal housing process through casework and follow the statutory process, but we work with the housing association partners to secure tenancies. We do have one of the housing organisations called the Wheatley Group. They are part of the initial setup of Housing First, and they committed to having 200 tenancies initially for Housing First tenancies across Scotland. And that's linked to the 5 Pathfinder areas that exist nationally. So what we have to do is, at the moment, we're at 184, as you know, and a very small number of those are not from Wheatley. So there's a big piece of work that we need to do to properly engage the other housing associations. And there are some challenges with that because some housing associations don't have the type or size of housing that we need for Housing First tenants. So mostly we're looking at single people, and mostly we're looking at maybe at most a 2-bedroom property, and not all the 68 housing associations have that. So we don't sit with a number. It's more of a development where we go case by case and ask for a tenancy because that's where the person has asked for. We will approach the organisations, the housing organisations that are in that area, and we will try and secure a tenancy for them in that way. So it's more about where the person's looking for than there being a pot of individual houses available.
You are in favor of the agreement like did the major in France, in Toulouse, to fix a number of houses that it's maybe more easier for you than to ask every single person to have a house.
Yeah. This year in Glasgow, the work that's been done on the rapid rehousing transition plans in Glasgow, which is a national strategy, it's part of the national homelessness strategy. So the Scottish Government tasked all of the 32 local authorities in Scotland with establishing what they call the rapid rehousing transition plan. And the idea of that plan was that far too many people come into homelessness, spend too long in the system and don't get rehoused quick enough, and with a particular focus on complex needs. So that's part of that process. In order for us to do that, this year with COVID, part of the recovery plan was that all of the RSLs, or housing associations, RSLs in Glasgow stands for Registered Social Landlords. That's the name given to these associations who have blocks of housing, and you probably already know that. So what was asked of all of the housing associations was to give potentially 100% of their stock availability for homeless households. And many of them have reached 80–90% since the return, since things opened back up with the return to work from the initial lockdown. So what we would do with that is we will look for part of that. We'll work with the casework teams within the local authority and try and broker. We don't have a great success at the moment with the smaller associations. And I think there are a lot of barriers that we still have to address. If they did have a number of tenancies, it would help us. But there's another side of that, which is because we have choice-based housing, for quite a lot of the associations, the service users that we've had through Housing First are not asking for those areas. And what we've done in some cases is where we know something is coming up, we've gone round, we've looked round the service users to maybe, if someone is looking for somewhere close by in the neighbourhood to where a house is available, but it's not been very successful that way. Our success seems to be where they say they want to stay, and then we try our best to match that. I hope that answers your question.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry. All right.
Can I add something, or it's finished?
You can add something. You can add something, of course.
Yeah, maybe it's interesting. In The Hague, we have also lack of housing companies, so we try to seduce the private market. So we talk with private owners, and they have about 60,000 houses in The Hague. So that's a big amount. And what important is for them that they have no problems with the people that come in their house. So we have to ensure that there is a good intake and a good screening, and also that we can offer some help for the first month rent, for example. We have also a project, the Modern Hospita. So when people have a room available in their house, we ask them to also ask for us. And we have a lot of young people under 30 years. We have also good screening, and we help them also with a good match. And we hope that that's an original way to create more space for homeless youngsters to have a quick room, and that they don't have to wait too long, because the housing companies can't offer all we demand.
Right, thanks, Matthijs. I think what you're telling us is a very interesting case, and it might be interesting to have some extra exchange on that after the winter school. You're not really a part of the network, a formal part of the network, but nevertheless, I think your case is very interesting to discuss. So we will be in contact with you about that. Thanks, Helen and Eleanor, for your presentation and discussion. We really have to wrap up because we are running over time, but I just wanted very small, like 10 seconds, max 1 minute, lessons learned from your case.
Well, lessons learned. Things take so much more time than we expected. There's some really positive outcomes can be achieved from a real person-centered approach, and we still have to develop systems, support systems more as we go along, particularly around mental health and real support for trauma.
Mm-hmm. I think, just to add to what Eleanor said, that some of the findings from the research was that Housing First isn't a panacea. So some of the service users telling us that actually at a time in my life where things are the most difficult, having a house is probably not what I need. There's some conversation around congregate style Housing First and the lack of maybe understanding of camaraderie and companionship that you get from that kind of congregate style living that you don't get from living on your own. So that was kind of some of the things that service users were telling us as well.
All right, great. We'll close down. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope it was an interesting talk and discussion. Now over to Patricia.